Step away from the vehicle and put your hands up now.
I'm complying, officer. I just need to show you my paperwork. It's right here.
Andrea Collins stood in her own garage with grocery bags still in the trunk when the flashlight hit her face. The voice came next, hard and cold. "Ma'am, step away from the vehicle." She didn't panic. That's what they remember most later. The way her hands stayed steady when she turned around, the way her voice stayed level when she said, "This is my garage, Unit 3B. I'm unloading groceries." The taller officer, Ryan Keller, kept the flashlight trained on her eyes. "We got a call. Suspicious person. You don't match the resident description." Andrea's fingers tightened around her keys, metal pressed into her palm. She recognized what was happening because she'd seen it 1,000 times before, just never from this angle. "I live here," she said. "My name is on the lease." The second officer, Mark Ellison, circled around her car, younger, nervous energy. His hand rested near his holster like he'd been taught in training videos that always ended badly. "Then why are you parked in this spot?" Ellison asked. "Because it's assigned to me." Keller stepped closer. His boots scraped concrete. "I need you to step away from the car and show me some identification." Andrea's mind moved fast. Fourth Amendment, reasonable suspicion, articulable facts. She'd written guidelines about this exact scenario. Am I being detained, or am I free to finish unloading my groceries? The question landed like a slap. Keller's jaw tightened. "You're being investigated, so yes, you're detained." Investigated for what? Standing in my own garage? Somewhere above them a car door slammed, footsteps echoed, then faded. Someone else coming home, a witness, even if they didn't know it yet. "Don't make this difficult," Ellison said. "We just need to figure out why you're here." Andrea let out a slow breath through her nose. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Oil and warm metal hung in the air. "I am here because I live here, and because I have every legal right to stand in this garage without being treated like a suspect." Keller's radio chirped. He ignored it. "Turn around, hands where I can see them." Her heart rate stayed steady. Her face gave nothing away, but something shifted in her eyes. A line had been crossed. "I'm reaching into my bag for my wallet," she said clearly. The flashlight followed her movement. The beam trembled slightly. At that moment, a phone camera appeared at the far end of the garage. A neighbor, silent, recording. The garage door above her finally closed with a heavy thud. What should have been a routine misunderstanding became something else entirely. Andrea Collins grew up in Prince George's County, Maryland, middle-class neighborhood, 2 parents who worked long hours. Her mother taught public school. Her father drove a city bus. They taught her early that rules mattered, but so did knowing who wrote them and who enforced them. She learned how to stay calm when adults raised their voices, how to listen without reacting, how to respond with precision instead of emotion. Those skills carried her through college, through law school, through clerkships where she was often the only black woman in the room and always the most prepared. She graduated at the top of her class, not because she was loud, but because she was relentless. At 31, Andrea joined the Department of Justice, not in a ceremonial role, not behind a desk pushing paper. She joined the Civil Rights Division, the part of the DOJ that investigates misconduct, the part that cities fear. For 15 years, she worked cases involving unlawful searches, false arrests, excessive force, systemic discrimination. She sat across from police chiefs, union lawyers, city attorneys who tried to minimize evidence and bury patterns. She didn't argue emotionally. She presented facts, timelines, body camera footage, internal emails that told the real story. She helped negotiate consent decrees. She helped remove officers who had accumulated complaints but remained protected. She helped families who had lost sons and daughters finally hear the words the system rarely offered. We were wrong. Andrea was known inside the DOJ for being unshakable, soft-spoken, meticulous. When she asked questions, people answered carefully. She bought her townhouse 3 years earlier. Quiet, gated community, assigned parking, private garages. She chose it because she wanted anonymity, a place where she could come home, unload groceries, and exist without her title following her through the door. That night, she was off duty. No badge, no briefcase, just grocery bags and exhaustion. The officers who confronted her had their own histories. Ryan Keller had been on the force for 9 years. Solid evaluations, no major disciplinary actions, but his file contained something harder to quantify, a pattern of complaints that never quite stuck, stops that escalated quickly, residents who felt talked down to, reports that used vague language like subject appeared nervous or did not belong. Nothing provable, nothing that triggered discipline. Mark Ellison was newer, 4 years on patrol, eager, ambitious, the kind of officer who mirrored his senior partner. He learned when to speak and when to stay quiet. He learned that backing another officer mattered more than asking questions. The call that brought them to the garage was brief. Suspicious individual, black female, garage area, caller unsure if resident. No report of a crime, no forced entry, no theft, just suspicion. Both officers arrived already forming a narrative. Someone out of place, someone who didn't match expectations, a person to question rather than a resident to protect. Neither of them knew who Andrea Collins was, but the irony sat quietly between them. She had helped draft the very policies that governed police conduct during stops. She had argued cases about unlawful detentions that mirrored what was happening to her in real time.
As she stood there under that light, calm and controlled, both sides were moving toward a collision neither fully understood yet. The tension in the garage didn't break. It thickened. Andrea stood exactly where she was, feet shoulder-width apart, grocery bags still in the open trunk behind her. The fluorescent light buzzed softly. The sound felt louder now. "I can show you my driver's license," she said. "I can show you my registration. The garage code is assigned to my unit." Keller didn't respond immediately. He stepped to the side and angled his flashlight toward the rear wall, then back to her face. He wasn't looking for information. He was looking for control. "Just hand over the ID," Keller said. "We'll sort it out." Andrea didn't move. "Before I do that, I need to understand why I'm being detained in my own garage without any allegation of a crime." Ellison shifted his weight. His eyes flicked toward the phone at the far end of the garage. The neighbor filming wasn't hiding it anymore. "You're escalating this," Ellison said. "We're just trying to do our jobs." "No," Andrea replied. "You escalated when you assumed I didn't belong here." The words hung in the air. Clean, precise, unemotional. Another garage door opened one level above. A woman's voice echoed briefly, then footsteps on concrete. A second neighbor leaned over the railing, looking down. "What's going on?" someone asked. "Police business," Keller said sharply. "Please step back." No one stepped back. The phone camera zoomed in slightly. The red recording light glowed. Andrea reached into the trunk slowly and picked up a folder tucked between grocery bags. Receipts, mail, utility statements. She held it up. "This has my address on it," she said. "Same address as this garage. Same name as my license." Keller didn't look. "Put the folder down. Hands where I can see them."
Andrea exhaled. She placed the folder gently on the trunk edge and raised her hands slightly, palms open. "I am complying, but you are detaining me without reasonable suspicion." Keller's jaw clenched. His authority was being questioned. Worse, it was being questioned in front of witnesses. Ellison leaned closer to Keller and spoke under his breath. "We should run her ID and clear it." Keller shook his head almost imperceptibly. "Not yet." This wasn't about verifying residency anymore. It was about not backing down. From the railing above, someone said, "She said she lives here." Keller looked up. "Sir, this does not concern you." "It concerns all of us," another voice replied. "You're treating her like a criminal." Keller turned back to Andrea. His hand hovered near his radio. "Last warning, ma'am. Turn around." Andrea didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. "If you put me in cuffs, you are making a decision that will follow you for the rest of your career." That landed harder than shouting ever could. Ellison swallowed. He looked again at the phone recording, at the growing audience, at Andrea's calm. Keller heard it all and chose not to hear it. He stepped forward. In that moment, the situation crossed the point of no return. Officer Keller reached for her arm. Not fast, not violent, deliberate. Andrea felt the pressure before she saw the movement, fingers closing around her wrist, firm, possessive, the kind of grip meant to signal authority without words. "I am not resisting," she said immediately. Her voice stayed level, clear enough for the cameras, clear enough for witnesses. Keller pulled her arm behind her back anyway. The sound of metal echoed through the garage, a sharp click, then another. The handcuffs locked into place with a final mechanical snap that seemed to hang in the air longer than it should have. Andrea closed her eyes for half a second, not in fear, in recognition. This was the moment. The cold steel pressed into her wrists, too tight, deliberately so. She shifted slightly, testing the pressure. The cuffs did not give. You're being detained pending investigation, Keller said. Detained for what crime? Andrea asked. Keller didn't answer. Ellison stood a step back now, his hands hovered uncertain. He looked at the phones, at the neighbors, at Andrea standing calmly in cuffs, grocery bags still sitting open behind her. Someone near the ramp whispered, "This is wrong." A woman's voice echoed from above, "She didn't do anything." Keller guided Andrea forward. Each step echoed against the concrete. The sound of her shoes felt amplified, slow, heavy. As they walked toward the patrol car, Andrea focused on details, the smell of exhaust, the scrape of her shoe against a crack in the floor. The way Keller's breathing had changed, shorter now, tighter. Ellison opened the back door. Andrea turned her head slightly toward the phones. "Please keep recording. Everything." She sat down carefully, the hard plastic seat pressed against her back. The door closed with a hollow thud that sealed the space around her. Inside the car, it was quiet. No radio, no talking. Just the hum of the engine and the faint echo of voices outside. Keller took the driver's seat. He steered straight ahead for a moment longer than necessary. Ellison stood outside the car, then finally walked around and got in the passenger seat. The patrol car pulled out of the garage. Andrea watched the concrete walls slide past the window. Her reflection flickered faintly in the glass. Calm face, controlled breathing, wrists locked in steel. Her mind was already moving ahead. Timeline, witnesses, body cameras, Fourth Amendment, unlawful detention, unlawful arrest. In the front seat, Keller's grip tightened on the steering wheel. He replayed the moment she warned him, the way she said it, not as a threat, as a fact. Neither of them spoke. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was loaded. The patrol car rolled into the station lot just after 8:47 p.m. Andrea counted the seconds by the rhythm of the turn signal clicking off. Keller parked, shut off the engine, and sat there for a moment. No one moved. Finally, Ellison opened the door. Andrea stepped out carefully. The cuffs pulled slightly as she straightened. Her shoulders stayed back. Her chin stayed level. Inside the station, the air smelled like disinfectant and old coffee. Phones rang, a printer whirred. Someone laughed near the break room. Normal life continued, unaware that something irreversible had just entered the building. They walked her past the front desk. The desk sergeant looked up, eyes flicking from Andrea's face to the cuffs. "What do we have?" Keller said. Suspicious person refused to cooperate. Andrea turned her head. "That is false. I complied at every step." The sergeant paused. He studied her, not just her clothes or her posture, her composure. "Name?" he asked. "Andrea Collins." "Date of birth?" Andrea answered without hesitation. Ellison handed over her driver's license. The sergeant took it and typed slowly. The room shifted. The tapping stopped. The sergeant leaned closer to the screen, then closer again. He glanced at Andrea, then back at the monitor. Keller felt it before he saw it, the change in posture, the tightening around the eyes. "Sergeant?" Keller asked. The sergeant stood up. "One moment." He walked into the back office and closed the door. Andrea remained still. Her breathing stayed even. She watched Keller from the corner of her eye. For the first time since the garage, Keller did not meet her gaze. The office door opened. A lieutenant stepped out. Gray hair, calm voice, measured movements. Someone who had learned the cost of mistakes. "Miss Collins," he said. Andrea looked at him. "Yes." The lieutenant held her license. His hand was steady. "Can you confirm your current employer?" The question landed softly, precisely. "The Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division." Silence. Ellison's face drained of color. Keller blinked once, then again. The lieutenant nodded slowly, as if confirming something he already knew. "High-ranking attorney, Washington-based." Andrea did not smile. "I asked multiple times to verify my identity. You chose not to." The lieutenant turned to Keller. "Is that true?" Keller opened his mouth, closed it, swallowed. "Yes." The lieutenant exhaled. It was controlled but heavy. "Take the cuffs off." Ellison moved immediately. His hands shook as he unlocked them. The metal fell away. Andrea flexed her wrists slowly. Red marks circled the skin. The lieutenant met her eyes. "Miss Collins, on behalf of this department, I apologize." Andrea nodded once. "I want the body camera footage, all of it. The radio logs, the call recording, the incident report." "You'll have them," the lieutenant said. "Tonight." Keller stood frozen. The weight of the room pressed down on him. Every second replayed in his mind. The warning, the cameras, the cuffs. Andrea picked up her purse. "This didn't have to happen," she said quietly. Then she walked out. The consequences did not arrive quietly. By the next morning, the video from the garage was everywhere, posted first by a neighbor with shaking hands and a simple caption, "This happened in my building last night." By noon, it had crossed 1 million views. The footage showed everything the written reports could not erase: the calm woman in her own garage, the repeated explanations, the warning that went ignored, the click of handcuffs, the silence that followed. People paused the video frame by frame. They watched the moment Officer Keller reached for her arm. They watched Andrea's hand stay open. They watched the lights flicker above her head like an interrogation room that didn't need walls. Comment sections filled faster than moderators could keep up. Civil rights attorneys recognized it immediately. This was not a misunderstanding. This was textbook. By the end of the week, Andrea's legal team had filed a federal civil rights lawsuit. Unlawful detention, false arrest, violation of Fourth Amendment protections, equal protection violations. The defendants were named clearly: Officer Ryan Keller, Officer Mark Ellison, the city, the department.
The complaint cited timestamps, body camera footage, radio logs, training manuals that contradicted Keller's actions line by line. The department placed both officers on administrative leave within 48 hours. Keller's badge was surrendered, his service weapon logged into evidence. Ellison was reassigned pending investigation. Internal Affairs opened a review that quickly expanded beyond one night in a garage. Patterns emerged. Keller's prior stops resurfaced. Residents who had filed complaints years earlier were contacted again. This time, their statements were read closely. This time, the data was not dismissed. Ellison cooperated fully. He admitted he had felt the stop go wrong, but deferred to his senior officer. His body camera showed hesitation, silence where intervention should have been. The city attorney's office reviewed the case and reached the same conclusion Andrea had reached the moment the cuffs clicked. This was indefensible. Settlement talks began before depositions even started. The city moved quickly, not out of remorse, out of damage control. The final number was never officially announced. Sources close to the negotiations described it as substantial, enough to require city council approval, enough to trigger mandatory policy review. Andrea donated the settlement funds to civil rights organizations and police accountability groups. She issued one brief statement: this case was never about money, it was about precedent. Keller was terminated 6 weeks later. The letter cited violations of constitutional rights, failure to de-escalate, and conduct unbecoming an officer. His appeal was denied. Ellison received disciplinary action and mandatory retraining. His career continued, but under scrutiny that would not fade quickly. The department announced new procedures: mandatory verification of residency claims before detention, enhanced bias training, revised reporting standards. But the real impact could not be measured in press releases. Andrea returned to work: conference rooms, case files, policy drafts. She now sat on the other side of incidents that looked uncomfortably familiar. When colleagues asked how she was handling it, she gave the same answer: "I documented everything, just like I always do." What happened in that garage was not complicated. It was unlawful. Under the Fourth Amendment, police officers are required to have reasonable suspicion supported by specific and articulable facts before detaining a person. Standing in your own garage unloading groceries does not meet that standard. It never has. A vague call about a suspicious person is not a blank check. Officers are trained that suspicion must be tied to behavior, not appearance, not race, not assumptions about who looks like they belong. In Andrea Collins' case, the officers had multiple opportunities to correct course. She explained, she offered documentation, she remained calm. None of that mattered once bias filled in the gaps. That's how constitutional violations usually happen, not with shouting or chaos, with quiet confidence in the wrong conclusion. Psychologically, this incident followed a familiar pattern. Once the officers framed Andrea as out of place, every action she took was interpreted through that lens. Her questions became defiance, her composure became suspicion, her knowledge became a threat. This is confirmation bias at work. When authority figures commit to a narrative, they often escalate rather than reassess. Admitting a mistake feels like losing control, especially in front of witnesses. For anyone watching this, there are lessons here that matter. If you are confronted by police, remain calm, speak clearly, ask whether you are being detained. Do not argue emotionally. Document everything if you can, or ensure someone nearby is recording. You are not required to consent to searches without a warrant or probable cause. You have the right to remain silent beyond identifying yourself where legally required. You have the right to ask for a lawyer. And perhaps most importantly, understand that asserting your rights is not a crime, even if it's treated like one in the moment. Andrea Collins knew the law. She knew the process. Most people do not. That disparity is where harm lives. If this story moved you, hit that like button.
Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Share this with someone who needs to see it, and drop a comment below. I want to hear what stood out to you most. Because stories like this don't just entertain, they educate, they prepare. They remind us that justice doesn't begin in courtrooms. It begins with recognizing how easily it can be denied. This story resonates because it exposes a truth many experience but few see acknowledged. Respectability does not shield you from bias. Credentials do not guarantee protection. Calm behavior does not always prevent escalation. Accountability only arrived because there was video, witnesses, and a woman who knew how to navigate a system designed to exhaust people into silence. So the final question is not whether the officers made a mistake. They did. The real question is how many similar mistakes go unrecorded. How many garages? How many stops? How many people without cameras, without legal knowledge, without a safety net? If this story made you uncomfortable, good, because discomfort is the first step towards change. Andrea Collins walked out of that police station the same way she walked into her garage that night, head high, shoulders back, calm. But she walked out knowing something most people never want to learn. The system doesn't protect everyone equally. It protects those who can afford to fight back, those who know how, those who have the tools and the stamina and the refusal to accept being made small. She had all of that. Most people don't. And until that changes, stories like this will keep happening. In garages, in parking lots, in living rooms, in places where people should feel safe but don't. The cameras will keep rolling. The videos will keep going viral. The settlements will keep getting signed. But real justice won't arrive until the cameras aren't needed anymore. Until officers see a woman unloading groceries and think, she belongs here, instead of, she doesn't match. Until the first instinct is protection, not suspicion. Until the benefit of the doubt is extended equally, regardless of what someone looks like when the flashlight hits their face. Andrea Collins is still at the Department of Justice, still working cases, still sitting across from police chiefs and city attorneys. But now when she speaks, they listen a little differently, because they know what she knows, that the line between enforcing the law and violating it is thinner than most people want to admit. And sometimes all it takes is one garage, one night, one decision to ignore the warning, to cross a line you can never uncross. Stay curious, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.